Okay, let's talk about the two tevilas. This is actually more of a Hilchos Nida type of thing. I'll say it outside. People don't need to see it inside, but it's actually an interesting controversy going on. Uh, it started a few years ago between our Rabbi Ariel, who's one of Rabbi Ariel's sons. He's in the Old City. He's very knowledgeable in matters of Mikdash, like his father, and Rabbi Aryeh Katz. What were they discussing? You guys know about Chumra de Rabbi Zeira?
Yeah.
Okay. Chumra de Rabbi Zeira says that with the laws of Nida, they're complicated. Right? Woman has to know what's happening to her body. Now, it could just be a regular period. Or it could be that she's actually a zava. Zava is things are happening that should not be happening. It's the wrong time. And they're happening a few consecutive days, in which case she actually has to go through a longer purification process. According to biblical law, a woman who starts her ordinary period is impure for 7 days. So the bleeding goes on for 4 days, 3 more days of being whatever, impure, and then at the end of the 7th day, she can immerse in the mikvah, and then she's pure again. That's for ritual purposes and also intimacy, and that has a lot of implications because in the Torah, you have to be able to eat korbanos, you have to go to the mikdash, etc. A woman who's a zava has a harder time. She first has to wait for any bleeding to stop and then count 7 clean days. So it could be that if what they did is, the Rabbi Zeira reports, whenever Rabbi Zeira lived, by the way, in the 2nd century, 3rd century, overlapped them, Rabbi Zeira reports that the women took it upon themselves that they'd treat every single thing as potential zivut, which means 4-day period, now 7-day clean days, 11 days, 12 days, whatever it might take, and then immerse in the mikvah, at least to have normal relations. Now, that is what people do. And there are people who are saying you can't get rid of Rabbi Zeira's Chumra is considered psak halacha. It's mentioned in the Gemara as an example of psak halacha that you can't get rid of. And the Rambam says that too. They're stuck with them. Fine. The Tosafists and other Rishonim after them, like especially the Ramban, point out that this actually had some historical implications. Why? Well, there was a point in history where people eventually stopped keeping laws of Tum and Tara. Kohanim still needed to eat Truma. People still wanted to separate tithes and Truma from their crops in purity. Even though the temple was destroyed, there were a lot of attempts in history to rebuild the temple. There were certain temple-related practices that continued well after the Churban. For example, Bar Kokhba tried to rebuild the temple. It's been pointed out, Korban Pesach was done here and there after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. In order to attend these things, you have to be ritually pure, right? And people also used to go to the Temple Mount to pray. Until, let's say, the Ottoman period, it was considered normal that if you were pure, you go to the Temple Mount and pray as long as the Gentiles will let you. That's why Maimonides writes, I got to go to the Temple Mount and prayed, as we saw last month. Fine. So the Tosafos mentioned the 2 dunks. Rabbi Kirschenbaum likes to point this one out. The women would go to mikveh right away according to biblical law. It means 7 days after the period started, immerse right away for taros and kachim purposes, so that if they're the Kohen's wife, they can continue eating truma, for example. Wait a minute. The Kohen also has to, if he's got in contact with the dead, has to get sprinkled with ashes of paraduma. Didn't that disappear with the Beis HaMikdash? And the answer is no. There was a lot of leftover paraduma water held by certain individuals and rabbanim for centuries after the destruction of the temple. It's an answer to the question. If you study the Mishnah, you see that Moses prepared a paraduma. Well, he didn't. He had his nephew do it. And those ashes apparently lasted until Ezra's time. And Ezra did it again. And then as we get farther in history, we have more and more and more often paradumas processed. Does that mean they just didn't have siyata d'shmaya and didn't last? And the answer is no. It's that they're doing more so they could, increase the availability of this and also around the world. Even in Bavel they had. Okay, so it says, Yochanan Kohen Gadol prepared one. And then it says that, already in the 1st century, they prepared 3. Okay? The first paraduma water lasts for 1,000 years. And in the 1st century, you have to do it every 10 years. Okay, so they're increasing the supply. So what happens here? There were Kohanim and other people trying to keep the laws of Tum and Tara. So the woman would go to the mikveh once for purity purposes, but for intimate purposes, she would then keep Chumra de Rabbi Zeira. Okay? So Rabbi Katz said we have to reincorporate this into our practice today. Why? because there are things that people want to do. People want to learn how to keep Tumah and Tara, but we're stuck with Chumra de Rabbi Zeira for personal reasons. So let's say to go to the Temple Mount, a woman, according to this idea in Tosfos and is brought in the Ramban, says historically speaking, a woman had to, let's say, attend Korban Pesach. I remember discussing this with Rabbi Kirschenbaum. He pointed this out to me. If a woman wants to go for Korban Pesach, so she had a period on Monday. Korban Pesach is being offered on next week, Monday. So that's 7 days. She'll be able to dunk and then attend Korban Pesach or eat Korban Pesach that night. But for Chumra de Rabbi Zeira, she had her period for 4 or 5 days. She's only going to go to the mikvah on Chol HaMoed. So she's going to go twice. She'll go to the mikvah midoraisa so she could not miss Korban Pesach. And then she'll go to mikvah later on Chol HaMoed for personal reasons. Okay?
So,
what?
if she goes, though, to become Torah,
Yeah, to eat the Korban Pesach.
to eat the Korban Pesach, why does that not allow, why can't she kill 2 birds with 1 stone?
So, and that's what I asked. That was the question. Because we have to keep Chumra de Rabbi Zeira. Chumra de Rabbi Zeira was accepted by all the women, and they have to have the suffix that she's a zava, so you still have to go. Still have to keep it. Apparently, this is historically what they used to do. That was Rabbi Katz's argument. Okay? And Rabbi Ariel said something very interesting. He didn't argue the utility of such an idea. He said, I don't think Tosfos and Ramban are correct. I don't think this 2 dunks, which by the way is not mentioned by the Rambam. Right? Rabbi Moshe Feinstein has a slight answer to that, by the way. But he says, he brings a lot of Talmudic proof saying that when Chumra de Rabbi Zeira actually happened, people were no longer keeping laws of Tumah and Tara. There was never any overlap. There was never this 2 dunks type of thing happening. Okay? Never was. That's his first argument. He brings like 50 proofs to that. He wrote this about 9 years ago. That's the first thing. And you could go through the arguments if you want to learn. It's a master class in Maseches Nida. Okay, but there's basically a lot of implications that it never actually was historical. And then he says, maybe we don't have to. There's all other things. If we could get a Sanhedrin together, maybe we could abrogate, just push away Chumra de Rabbi Zeira. There are a lot of people who don't like it. People study laws of Nida and they don't have the right attitude toward the law. It's just like, oh, this is one of those rabbinic enactments that hurt people. Like Gunt of Shani. We should just get rid of it. Okay? But, yeah, Chumra de Rabbi Zeira. It does lead to certain people having, for example, what's called halachic infertility. Women whose cycles are so short that they miss their ovulation because of this. Okay? So that's Machon Pua type of things. As the Machon Pua rabbis, maybe there is a rabbi here and there who tells a particular woman who's been childless for too long. It doesn't matter if they get divorced. It used to be a couple not having kids for 10 years. What do they say?
Get divorced.
Yeah, find a different wife. Try again with someone else. But then they're realizing, oh, this woman, she just has a really short cycle. Doesn't matter if she keeps Chumra de Rabbi Zeira and she's technically fertile, she's going to miss it no matter who her husband is. Okay? So maybe already there's been discussions of types of rabbis who have to deal with these things. Ask Rabbi Barchim. He's dealt with this type of question before. And the Machon Pua rabbis, before they started dealing with end-of-life issues, this used to be their bread and butter. Right? So Rabbi Ariel was saying that maybe it could come into play, maybe not. The question is, what should we do in the future? Okay? And it could be, do this, we could do that. We'll have to see. My point is that even if Rabbi Ariel is correct, that historically it didn't exist, like he can't pinpoint which century they were keeping Chumra de Rabbi Zeira as a halacha, and also women were going to mikvah d'oraisa. Certainly today, it is practical, because what happens? We do have women who want to go to the Temple Mount. God willing, tomorrow the sacrificial service will be initiated, where the people have been trying to offer Korban Pesach for a few years. So this, even if it wasn't historically practiced, it is a technical possibility today. We should tell women, keep Chumra de Rabbi Zeira for your own personal lives, but if you want to do that which is related to the temple, let's just say attend the Temple Mount. So immerse d'oraisa. What?
Can I ask a complicated question?
Oh, it might not be so complicated, but try.
Okay.
Remember, I'm glad you said it. A lot of people would say it's a stupid question. You know what my response is? Say there's no such thing as a stupid question, just stupid people. Okay, but you have a complicated question, which is even better.
So the question is like this. If I'm assuming correctly, we don't normally make minhagim or make rules or customs based off of the Amarit scene. based off people who are not knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not assuming wrongly, most women were not knowledgeable of Torah and mitzvot, right? So by them not,
Mm,
I mean, with exceptions like Bururia, right? So there's exceptions to the rule, but the masses of women actually being on a scholarly level, I'm assuming was not such a high. It was not a high probability. So with that assumption in mind,
yes.
could we assume that this minhag that has been created over time? Well, the question is like this: does
Yeah.
that actually negate the Torah mitzvah that if a woman does go into the mikveh after the seventh day, she becomes Torah? Does that negate that? Meaning, in all practical aspects, whether she's going to her body or whether she's going to have intimacy, does that is that minhag so strong that it says no, it only stops here and it doesn't continue in this area?
So I'll read you what the Rambam says.
Okay.
He actually addresses this. Kol shamarnu benita v'zava v'yoledes hu din Torah. Everything I've said until this point, this is the 11th parak of Yisrubia. This is Torah law. Uv mishpatim elu hayosim kishayu beit tanina gadol mitzuyim. They kept this when there was a Sanhedrin. That's the thing. There was a Sanhedrin. V'yusham chachamim gedolim shuakim radamim. They were great, wise men who could know to make these distinctions. What kind of damim this is? Regular period zava yoledes. Any question, they could just ask, go to the up, the Torah promised you'd always have someone to answer the questions. Bein dam ledam, bein dam nida, the dam ziva. What type of bleeding? Okay, and those times the women kept careful track of these things. By the way, the Maimonidean way of keeping track of this is extremely complicated. No one holds of. It's almost impossible. I'm talking about the 11 and 7 days. Josh was discussing this, and the other guys were discussing.
Somebody made a shear about it.
Yeah,
I saw all the charts.
All the charts. You could see the Makbili charts are crazy, and even he's not so 100% sold on the whole Maimonidean thing. No one was. The Sovra Tamid Yemei Nidav Yemei Aziva. They know how to keep track. I don't think nowadays we have computers doing it for people, but either way, that's what it was. The Torah Gadol Yesh Binyanim Yamim Famim Rabot Yavoli De Safek. It's actually quite hard to do this. You're going to get situations down. Shafil Rat Habat Dam Biyom Alida. Yotoyom Adchilim Linot La Yemei Nida Yemei Ziva. Basically, if a girl has from she's born, okay, she has some sort of bleeding, so she has to start to count. And it does happen, by the way. There's a hormonal thing. The fichach lo tidma bat beziva elabat asurayamin. Shein rad yom shativa late. Okay, hold on a second. And he continues that technical thing. Uvimei chachmei Talmud nistapega davar harbei beriota damim. In the days of the sages of the Talmud, they got too many svegos in these things. Nidkaklu avistatot, and people aren't keeping track of the right times. The fisha lo haya koach b'chol nashim linot yemei nida yemei ziva. Women just couldn't do it. 11, 7 days, knowing exactly for the rest of their lives. Could you do such a thing? Bad enough at counting weeks. Okay? Anything counted as zivut. Okay? Even if she knows that she's supposed to be a needle. So this thing became like that. Bain Sharaf. So the Rambam says that this actually is because of what? The Sanhedrin, no, but lack thereof. So first thing is, they first made one, the Chachamim made a Zeira about this, and the women took it upon themselves, and he says, now we're stuck with that. It's not that the women were ignorant. The women were keeping these halachas the best they could. But if you don't have guidance, so you have to be machmir. Right. And that's what happened. The lack of guidance made them just take on this chumra. Now,
you have guidance up the wazoo.
What?
Nowadays, what you
yes. So that's what they're saying. This debate devolved into, if we could set up a Sanhedrin that would get recognized, and set up, like, you're supposed to have Sanhedrins in every city. There's supposed to be 23 men who sit here deciding for the city, let's say, right? And not say Kochav Yaakov Levad Tel Tzion Levad. There's supposed to be, some unity here. Then the women would have where to go. We'd be able to settle these things. And matter of fact, maybe we could even reset things. Okay, the Torah is quite dynamic. That's what it's supposed to be. But the chumras are basically because we don't have guidance. It's not of Admaratzis like they took it upon themselves. And the women, but they weren't sages.
Wait, does it specifically have to be a Beit Din, or does it have to be a Chachamim?
So Chachamim are supposed to sit down and be accessible. The ones who are taking questions,
Well,
they make it that's a
nowadays
big
you
deal.
have
Yeah.
plenty of rabbinic doctor types and places like Machon Shilo that it's like all
So
day,
yeah,
day.
if what makes the beit din is when they sit together and they there to offer counsel to people, either a mumche rabbin, which sometimes you have that. There's one rabbi who's mumche like everybody. He knows everything and he's on his own. But if not, then what you're supposed to have for a psak is people sit and be available and to deliberate things and then give a group answer, which is the best way of coming to the conclusion because you can talk it out. That's what's supposed to be. By the way, some places they have this. Some places they actually still do this. Every now and then there's like a community VOD, and the Teanecker, the Kew Gardens Hills VOD Rabbanim actually sit down and decide something. Which isn't bad. It's pretty good. But the problem is, we don't have what we're supposed to have. There's attempts to restart the Sanhedrin and people to sit down, but it's like, how many people actually participate in that? They said it themselves, like, it's supposed to be who's the top of the pyramid. When your rabbi doesn't know a question, who's he go to?
His rabbi.
And who's he go to? Like, find the people who sit at the tops of the pyramid and let them sit down and have a Sanhedrin already. It's not that difficult.